Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the people show, checking the pulse of a freaking frustrated Husker Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the show is brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, carrikerchronicles.com. It's where all your Husker sports and dreams and sometimes nightmares will come true. If you're when is it our turn? When is it our turn? I've watched USC. I've watched them all year long. We'll get into it. If you're as frustrated as I am, the Huskers still haven't won a game in November in 2 years. If you're as frustrated as I am, and it wasn't for lack of effort, on certain people's parts for sure. If you're as frustrated as I am that Nebraska hasn't won a game in November in 2 years, smash the freaking like button. All right, this should be exciting. Tomorrow night, Tom Osborne's going to join me. The freaking GOAT. Sunday night, 6 p.m. Central Time. On YouTube, 7 p.m. on social media. Monday's a special edition of the Carriker Chronicles. I'm not even going to tell you who it is because I don't want somebody trying to scoop me. Monday night, then Tuesday or Wednesday is going to be Charlie McBride. I have to put that out there despite the frustration because I think that's a pretty freaking loaded week. Subscribe, notification bell. All right, ladies and gentlemen, going into the game, we were 61st in the country in pass offense out of 68. Power 4, we'll pretend the Big 12 and ACC are power conference teams. Our power conferences, out of 68 power conference teams, 61 out of 68 when it comes to passing offense. Dana Holgorsen comes on in. All right, in 3 of our 4 losses this year, you can add today to this list as well, but coming into the game, now 4 or 5 of our losses this year, the offense had the ball at the end of the game with the opportunity to score, to either win and or tie the game. Obviously, have failed to do so. Okay, 3 out of 4 times, now 4 out of 5. USC's offensive line is all freshmen, all sophomore, except for their center. Their top 2 wide receivers. They're talented. They're talented. They've been floundering all year. Okay, but their top 2 wide receivers were both top 5 players coming out of high school in America at their positions. Lincoln Riley runs a version of the air raid. In fact, they throw the ball over 40 times a game coming into today. Now, Nebraska, USC is the only school Nebraska's ever played more than once and not beaten. Coming into today, we had played 5 times. We tied them once in 1970, the year we won the national championship. All right. I believe it was 21-21. That was the most attended regular season game of that season in the LA Coliseum. All right, USC had kind of a weird year that year. They beat Notre Dame, which actually allowed Nebraska to go on and win the national championship that year. Notre Dame was number 1. They beat a bunch of other teams. They scored 70 points on Washington State, yet ended up 6-4-1 that year. They were number 3 in the country that day, but they're the only school we've never actually beaten that we played more than once. Now, it was interesting. Coming into this game, it was a little bit heated. There was a flat-out 10-minute, skirmish, almost fisticuffs before the game between USC and Nebraska several times throughout the game. And there was a lot of penalties. There was a lot of, Zaire Wright was a little pumped up to play today. All right, easily two of the top 10 biggest brands in all of college football. 2 of the biggest blue bloods in all of college football over time. Between the 2 schools, 16 combined national championships. All right, almost 1,600 wins. A winning percentage of almost 690 between the 2 schools. 11 Heisman winners. All right, 286 All-Americans. 55 combined college football Hall of Famers. Interestingly enough, this was the first time in history between Nebraska and USC when they met on the field that neither team was ranked. All right, let's dive into the game just a smidge. Now, Holgorsen, Mike Leach was known for kind of having just plays on little cards, little index cards. Holgorsen literally learned the offensive lingo and used flashcards. All right, Holgorsen learned under Mike Leach, for those who don't know that. It's funny, you watch Andy Reid. His freaking play sheet looks like a Denny's menu, like 2 or 3 times over. It's interesting, all 3 highly successful offensive-minded coaches. It's interesting how differently people can approach things. Now, Nebraska started the season 5-1. USC started the season 3-1. Since Nebraska has the second most amount of losses in the Big Ten, this is all coming into today. Okay, they were 1-3 since USC coming into today had tied for the most amount of losses in the FBS in the last 6 games. They were 1-5. Think about that. When is it our turn? That's why I'm frustrated. When is it our turn? They figured it out. It's not like they're not trying in Lincoln, where I'm at. I get it. Big Ten records coming in. Nebraska was 2-4. USC was 2-5. again, I talk about how I felt before the game. You get to kind of go through the game with me, and then I give my final thoughts. This is a big game for both teams going forward. It's not make or break for anybody, but it was big as far as each individual football program. Now, USC started with the ball with their new quarterback, Jaden Maeva, who's got a big arm, good athleticism. You saw him run the option throughout the game. This dude's a physically talented dude. He could be a high NFL draft pick one day. All right, transferred from UNLV. Now he's a sophomore. Lincoln Riley's like, that's our quarterback of the future. Good for them. First two plays, deep throws right out the gate to test our secondary. Okay, the Trojans threw the ball in their first 3 plays of the game. The first 2 were deep passes. All of them were incomplete, 3 and out for the Black Shirts defense to start the game. USC punts. Now, the Trojans are #1 in the country when it comes to net punting. They've got a legit frickin' punter. That dude's a weapon. Their punter's a stud. Dylan Raiola coming into the game, completing 65% of his passes on the year, 1,921 pass yards, again, coming into today, 10 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Dana Holger, my goal for him before the year was to have a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, okay? Dana Holgerson, I was like, he may have Dylan run a little bit more RPO today. I know Dylan's not a gigantic threat with his legs. The biggest thing Holgerson wants Raiola is to be more confident, more decisive, ergo 2 + 2 = 4, be more efficient. The Huskers get a first down on their first drive and end up punting. I should mention the pregame scrum between Nebraska and USC. Zaire Wright's name, like the mics caught his name being mentioned in that scrum. Clearly this meant a lot to him. Clearly, I know what it's like to go against your former team. All human beings are created equal, but not all games are created equal when you're going against your former team, especially when you're a guy from LA like he was. He's from LA. He started 15 games at USC, got benched, transferred to Nebraska. So yeah, he marked this game on his calendar for sure. We'll get back to that. The Huskers secondary today is as healthy as it's been in quite a while. Tommy Hill is healthy. Finally, Marquise Buford played. All right, and obviously Zaire Wright has earned a black shirt since he got to Nebraska. All right, very next play after I wrote that, Wright picks the ball and takes it in for a pick 6. Nebraska leads 7-0. All right. The Trojans next drive, a touchdown. Anytime we got the lead, they just had the answer the very next drive. They really did. It was kind of frustrating. All right, the Trojans marched down the field, 9 plays, 65 yards, 6-yard touchdown pass. They tied the game 7-7. And I wrote, it's going to be that kind of game. Back and forth. All right, 1-score game. Now, it should be noted, and I talked about, I was surprised that the spread was almost double digits. I guess they did win by 8, but anyways, I digress. Should be noted, Dana Holgerson coaching on the field makes sense. He wants to simplify the offense so he doesn't have to be up in the booth, and he needs to get to know the players, so he wants to look them eye to eye while he's coaching them in the game. Got to get to know them. Nebraska's second drive, the Huskers offense is moving noticeably quicker, okay, under Dana Holgerson's direction than before. To get plays off, I'm curious to see what Holgerson, I wrote, does with Ja'Cory Barney. He's second amongst all Big Ten freshmen in receptions. All right, the #1 is Jeremiah Smith of Ohio State. Nebraska gets a first down, but has to punt after Dylan Raiola scrambles for the first down, but slides just short of the marker. All right, the Huskers have to punt the first 2 drives of the game. Dylan just seemed tentative today. He's been indecisive throwing the ball, and he missed some reads today, especially Jamal Banks at one point in the end zone, almost on a fake screen and go type play. Just seemed a little bit tentative as far as getting hit. I don't know how the back feels exactly. Obviously, he was cleared to play, but I think it affected definitely when he took off and run with the ball, but just a little bit more tentative in general. All right, first couple minutes. All right, I lost my place here. USC's next drive, despite the penalties, a bunch of penalties, especially on USC. They had 5 penalties for 70 yards in the first half and almost 14 yards per penalty, which basically meant they were almost all personal foul penalties. All right, their next drive, despite the penalties, another touchdown pass, Jaden Maeva to Kyron Hudson. All right, after it went through Malcolm Hartzog's fingers. There were several times today where the ball was up in the air or we had a chance to pick, I think 3 times in the first half maybe. And we had the 1 pick 6, but there could have been more. This was kind of just a crazy game. All right, USC leads 14-7. So far outside of the pick 6, the start of the game seemed a little bit similar to the UCLA game. Not exactly. We're not as flat, but there were some similarities to me. All right, the Huskers' next drive, we look more efficient. Nebraska, 9 play, 75-yard touchdown drive, really our best drive of the day. capped off by an option route for a touchdown to Emmett Johnson from Dylan Raiola out of the backfield, who out-leveraged the defender who had him in coverage. It was a 29-yard touchdown pass from Dylan. All right, his second touchdown pass in the last 5 games. All right, Emmett seems to be, I noticed he was getting more and more play time throughout the first half. I think he's our best running back. I've said it all year with all due respect to everybody else in that running back room. All right, he got more and more play time as the game went along, and I believe he started the second half as well. Nebraska converted a 3rd and long. Okay, on that drive, only the second first down the Trojans have allowed all year on a 3rd and 10 or longer type situation. The USC's defense is #1 in America when it comes to defending 3rd down, and especially 3rd and 5 or more. Their opponents only convert 15% of the time. The Blackshirts are back on the field. They've had 3 balls go right through their hands. Okay, I don't know why I wrote that twice. They need to communicate better. There were several times today where USC receivers and pass catchers were just wide open down the field. There was one play where the two safeties were running 2 different coverages. Like, there was just a lot of miscommunications and busted coverages today. Without those, this score is different. Without a lot of things, the score is different. But I thought Nebraska hurt themselves on defense most through miscommunication in the secondary. When they didn't have miscommunication, they actually played pretty well. But when you have miscommunications like that, you see long passes, which is what we saw a little bit too much of today. All right. Interesting side note, USC quarterback Jane Maive is one of 8 children. I have 6 kids of my own, so that resonates with me. Although I grew up basically as an only child, I have 3 half-siblings, story for another day. When he was announced USC starting quarterback during the bye week, he didn't even tell his parents. They found out from someone else. All right, he's a very quiet, humble, fierce competitor. Nebraska's defense forces a punt on USC's next possession. Unfortunately, on the Huskers' next possession, Dylan Raiola throws an interception. Luckily, the Huskers' defense forces another punt. Turnovers have been an issue lately. During the Huskers' first 6 games, we only had 4 turnovers. We were way in the plus column. I think it was +6 at one point. 0 points allowed off the 4 turnovers that we did have by our defense. The last 4 games coming into today, all right, 9 turnovers with 35 points against us as a result of those turnovers. Nebraska is even in the turnover margin now overall in the year, or at least we were coming in today, and we were even at this point in the game. I think with that pick at the end of the game, which I've got thoughts on, can't grab us like that. Just saying. I don't want to complain about officiating any more than I have to. Okay. We're even on the season as a whole. We were even to this game, to this point in the game. I think that last pick at the end may have put us in the negative column in the turnover margin battle. We'll have to double check the stats later. But even with being even in the turnover margin to this game, I wrote, it probably won't be good enough considering we're 4-21 in our last 25 one-score games. Nebraska, including the USC game today, is now 1-8. Our Matt Rule at Nebraska is now 1-8 in one-score games, now 1-9 after the USC game today. All right, in his career at Nebraska in one-score games. Dana Holgerson actually watched a few USC practices last spring, went to their spring, sat in on offensive meetings, watched some of their practices. He did a whole bunch of traveling, including going to places like France as well. The Huskers' next possession, like, when is it our turn? When is it our turn? When do we figure it out? SMU came back from the death penalty in the 80s, and I got them winning the ACC. Penn State had the whole Jerry Sandusky crap. And yes, they don't play anybody. My God, they don't play anybody. But they're going to be in the playoff and probably 11-1. Still with an outside chance of getting to the Big Ten championship game, although it's not likely. When is it our turn? I know they're trying. I was a part of big wins and bad losses too. But when is it our turn? When did going to a bowl game become so hard? All right, Huskers' next possession. We punt. Dylan Raiola was sacked on 3rd down when the whole left side of the O-line didn't move on the snap of the ball. Talk about miscommunications. All right. It's only USC's 14th sack of the season. They're tied for dead last in the Big Ten in sacks. USC gets the ball back, ends up punting. There was a penalty on the Trojans. This possession is not long before halftime, I should mention, as USC's got the ball. This was interesting to me. Matt Rule, there was a penalty. He accepted the 10-second runoff instead of declining it, which was interesting because he then later took a timeout. We were going to get the ball back. Now, we ended up getting pinned at our 2-yard line, but had it not happened that we got pinned at our 2-yard line, we could have got the ball at the 10, 15, or 20, minus the 10 seconds. The clock management was interesting to me. To accept the 10-second runoff, but then use the timeout when USC punched you because you want to do something with, I don't know. If you want to do something with the ball, I was confused. All right. I want to give a shout out to our All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gathering my thoughts. I was going to give a shout out, but that was only if we won. I digress. Halftime. Here are some of the stats that stood out to me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calm now. First downs, Nebraska had 9, USC had 12. Total yards, Nebraska had 138, USC had 216 total yards. Pass yards, we were 12 of 18 at halftime for 105 pass yards. USC was 16 of 24 for 131 pass yards. Rush yards, 11 rushes for 30. So we threw the ball 18 times, rushed it 11 times. For 33 yards, we averaged 3 yards per carry. USC, 15 rushes for 85 yards. They were averaging 5.7 yards per carry. The counters were killing us, and they run counter as much as anybody in the country. But the counters were hurting us in the first half. We had a turnover. They had a turnover at that point. It was 1-to-1 turnover battle. Penalties, we had 3 for 30. Really what was keeping us really in the game, because they were kind of outplaying us in the first half. Like I mentioned, they had 5 penalties for 70 yards, averaging 14 yards per penalty in the first half. This was kind of like a disjointed first half, honestly, for both teams, if I'm being honest with you. Okay. It was, all right. It was interesting and a little combative between the two teams. USC's defense playing a lot of man-to-man. They were basically saying, we're going to out-athlete you. We're better than you across the board. We're going to go man-to-man across the board. Your quarterback's not going to run, and we're going to win the one-on-one battles, and it was working. We were struggling to win the one-on-one matchups as they were running their man-to-man. Dana Holgorsen will try some new stuff in the second half. I was curious to see what adjustments we could make, what adjustments he would make. I know he's new here. Okay. The Huskers' 1 touchdown drive was 9 plays, 75 yards. Our other 4 drives in the first half was 20 plays. The touchdown drive was 9 plays, 75 yards. The other 4 drives in the first half were 20 plays, 78 yards. Emmett Johnson, all right, again, started the second half, was getting more plays. I thought he played well today. All right, Nebraska comes out the second half with their second best drive of the game. So far, I wrote, they end with a John Hull field goal. It was a 29-yarder. Huskers take the lead 17-14. Nebraska's offensive running backs kind of in that first drive finally had some holes to run through, all right, and seemed to have a little extra bounce to them. I was curious to see what type of halftime adjustments we'd make on defense too. Would the communication be better? All right. Unfortunately, USC made adjustments. They get paid too. They had some bounce in their step. And again, once we got the lead, they would go right down the field and score. The Trojans convert a 3rd down to stay on the field, extend the drive. All right, they end up scoring on a 48-yard touchdown pass, busting coverage, Maeva to Deuce Robinson. Interesting, Deuce actually went to USC to play football and baseball. He was a high school All-American in both sports. The Trojans now lead 21-17. Nebraska's defense did some good things today, just in those key moments. Got to figure that out. Huskers' next drive, punt. And our offense is clearly still trying to figure something out, is what I wrote. Nebraska, okay, is 0-8, now 0-9 after today in their last 8 attempts to become bowl eligible. Just as I wrote that, Ty Robinson forces a USC fumble. This needed to be a touchdown drive. It was recovered by the good guys. The good guys got the ball at the other guy's 16-yard line. Nebraska ball at the Trojans' 16-yard line. I said, here we go, baby. I can't tell you how badly I wanted to talk about a freaking win. All right, Nebraska ends up kicking a field goal. When we didn't get a touchdown, when we started the ball at their 16-yard line, that's when I was kind of like, I don't feel great about this. We needed to score a touchdown there. On 3rd down, Dylan Raiola missed the wide open Jamal Banks. It was kind of like a little screen and go. All right, in the corner of the end zone, he was open. Dylan looked at him, or at least it appeared that he did, ended up throwing the ball elsewhere. Should mention that John Hull, 5 for 5 on field goals. Okay, versus Ohio State and USC. The Trojans' next drive, they go deep into Nebraska territory. A field goal attempt blocked by Zaire Wright. I will tell you this, man, this dude, he's still the player of the game, even though we lost, in my opinion. Pick 6, blocked field goal. All right, I wrote, we've got to get something more. I don't expect miracles with this offense, but we've got to get something more out of our offense. The offense has only produced 10 points so far today, completely on their own, without the help of the defense or special teams to this point. All right, we have ran the ball a little bit better this second half. We're up to 4.8 yards per carry to this point. The young fella, Dylan Raiola, okay, just again, I mentioned he looked a little bit tentative, probably due to the hit in his back versus UCLA. Eventually, USC scores with Jaden Maeva's legs on an option play after an 84-yard drive, 13 plays, including a 4th down conversion. Pretty sweet play. put a guy in motion one way, faked it to him, ran the option the other way. That was a pretty sweet fourth down play designed by Lincoln Riley. All right. And so 13 plays, 84 yards, took over half the fourth quarter, like 7:39 off the clock. USC leads 28-20, 2:45 left in the game. I said, Nebraska ball, let's see what we do. We've had a lot of chances today. Let's see what happens now. We go on a 13-play drive down to the USC 13-yard line. And on the last play, and Dylan Raiola looked calm and collected on this drive. And I wrote, welcome to Nebraska, Dana Holgorsen. What are you going to call here, you know? The last pass was picked off by USC on a blatant pass interference on the last play. Like he flat out grabbed him. The announcers even said he couldn't come back to the ball. I don't want to complain about refs. I don't want to. It was a blatant pass interference. It was ridiculous. So I believe we'd get the ball half the distance to the goal. If we're at the 13, so maybe it's a 6.5. I don't remember the exact rule in the NFL. I think you get it at 2. It's confusing sometimes with college and NFL rules being so different. I have to look it up. But we would have had the ball much closer in another attempt. It was blatant pass interference. I'm just, whatever. All right, we got to find a way to get it done. USC finally did. They've been tortured almost all year. When are we going to figure it out? When is our turn? Our record in one-score games this year, USC was 1-5. All 5 of their losses were one-score losses, and they had a lead in the fourth quarter. 1-5 this year in one-score games, and they found a way to get it done. We're now 1-4 in one-score games. Here, I do want to give a shout-out to the Husker fans who made the trip to LA. Husker Nation represented very well. All right, as always, go to CarrikerChronicles.com. We actually have awesome merchandise. Go check out the merchandise. Go check out the post-game coverage. There's no place better than CarrikerChronicles.com. Other places do a phenomenal job, but no place is better. Here are my questions for you fine folks at home. Number 1, will Nebraska get one more win and go to a bowl game? Yes or no? Number 2, how did Dana Holgorsen do calling plays in your opinion? And number 3, why do you think Dylan Raiola looks just a little bit different at this point in the season than he did early on? I know he's a young fella. I have so much confidence in his potential. Let me know. Until next time, go Big Red. This was a rough one. And always remember to throw the bones. This show is brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. They are your local concrete experts. All things concrete, all things retaining wall. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. If this is your line of work, there's no better boss than Jason Armstrong. Go to dpsconstruction.net. The show is also brought to you by Allen Capital Group. They put my family's worries to rest because they've taken care of my family's finances for over a decade, and I trust them. Next level solutions for next level needs. Check them out at allencapgroup.com. That's ALLENCAP group.com.